Welcome. I'd like to share with you a couple of problems that came up for me in the discussion in Taanis, Yud Aleph and Beis, continuing to Yud Beis, and that is on the topic of a Taanis Sha'os, which, as you'll be familiar from the Daf Yomi discussion, means a fast that only lasts for a number of hours, as opposed to the standard fast, which lasts for a full day. The Gemara there, as you recall, says, Rav Huna there tells us that if a person is lon b'tainisa, which Rashi there means the person ended up only doing a half fast, doing part of the night, properly deciding in the middle of the night, okay, I'm gonna fast for the rest of the night. Says Rav Huna, since it wasn't done the proper way, he didn't accept before the beginning of the night to do a complete fast for the whole day, he wouldn't be mispalo shel Taanis. He doesn't add the anenu insertion to the Shemona Esrei. And the Gemara considers this ruling, and wonders how far is he going here. Maikasov Rav Huna Rav Yosef asks, what is he saying exactly? And the Gemara initially suggests that he means ein misan in l'shos, that in this case it is not considered a fast whatsoever. There's nothing there. As Rashi there explains, the halacha is, maybe he means, the Gemara suggests, that if a person takes on, he says, I'm going to fast for a few hours, he can then afterwards change his mind. Say, you know what, I'm not going to fast for a few hours. He's not beholden to what he committed on himself, and it's not binding in that sense. The Ritva is bothered by this, though. He says, if you say that that's what's going on here, which again Rashi does say, so we'll read from here. He says, Ma tam shalei yischayev bo b'kol shehu. Why shouldn't he be able to accept upon himself the shortest fast he wants? It lasts a few minutes. Why should it make a difference? V'lo Taanis nederhu. It's a neder. We all know a person can make a neder. Say, I'm not going to eat chocolate cake. Even if he says that should last for a few seconds. Sure, why not? Doesn't make a difference. Ein hefresh ben zman meruba ben zman muat. The duration of the neder is irrelevant. So that's it. The Ritva is bothered by this problem. Why should the Gemara even entertain that he wouldn't be beholden to this, whatever you want to say about the definition of a Taanis, but like separate and distinct from that is the guy vowed to do something, so why shouldn't he be beholden by that? The Ritva, you read it, the full thing inside there, I sort of shortened it to get the essential parts. Essentially, he answers that we're not dealing with a conventional neder. A conventional neder goes into effect on an object, a piece of chocolate cake. This neder is called nidre hegdish, and he says that's a chiyuv gavra. It's more like a shvua, in that it's the person saying, I promise not to do something. I'm not going to eat. I'm going to take on this mitzvah of a Taanis. And because of this, because we're in this sort of specialized track where he's creating the obligation on the basis of connecting with a particular mitzvah called a Taanis, so we have to define what a Taanis means. And are we in fact dealing with a mitzvah at all? If the guy says, I hereby accept on myself to fast for a few minutes, you could argue that that's not considered a mitzvah of a Taanis. The mitzvah of a Taanis is to really fast. To fast to the point where the person feels it. You have that affliction. So therefore, that's why there's this question in the Gemara, that's this discussion here, that maybe this cannot go into effect, because it's this special thing called nidre mitzvah. So my first problem that I want to share with you is I'm not sure if this fits with the words of Rashi. And should look at the Rashi, encourage you to look at it, and I highlighted the key words here. If you agree that this is not compatible with the words of Rashi, the question then becomes how Rashi understands. The Ritva has his answer, the Ritva has a nice solution. Okay, there's this special thing called Nidre Hegdish or Nidre Mitzvah, and therefore it creates this discussion of, well, maybe if he's only accepting on himself to fast for a few minutes, it's not considered a mitzvah. But if you agree that Rashi isn't working with such a concept, so then we have to try and understand, according to Rashi, why would the Gemara even consider the possibility that this is not a binding vow? A person can vow whatever he wants. If he says on the chocolate cake, I vow not to eat that for 5 minutes, that would go into effect. So why shouldn't it work in our case? Why is the Gemara saying, no, maybe he doesn't have to keep the vow at all? That is the first problem. Now, we saw in Yud Beis that Shmuel tells us that it's absolutely integral to do a Kabbalah, to accept the fast on oneself beforehand. And there's a discussion, does he have to do it in Mincha before? What's very clear from the Gemara is that there's this idea that you have to accept the fast on yourself beforehand. So my next problem is very simple. There is a well-known debate throughout Sha'os whether mitzvahs trichos kavana, is the intent integral to the mitzvah? Is there an absolute requirement to connect the act of the mitzvah you're doing to the fact that I'm now doing a mitzvah? Now, we rule like the opinion that is a requirement, and the post can discuss how that works on a practical level. But in any case, there's definitely a strong, many opinions, many Rishonim. There's definitely a position that has many proponents that mitzvahs are not tzrichos kavana. So my question is, according to that opinion, how do we understand this requirement of Kabbalah? What does that mean? In the Gemara's words, if somebody doesn't eat, but he didn't do a Kabbalah before, it is like he's like dami lemapucha de mal yazika. He's a bellows full of air. So it's hard for me to understand. I'm not quite sure why that should be. Certainly, a kavana has an important role in the halacha, but the essential thing when it comes to the mitzvahs is the act. And so, even if you didn't specifically plan on this, do his hineni muchan and mezumin before, why is there this integral requirement to formally accept the fast on oneself before? And I think these questions, these two problems are related. In my understanding, the solution to one will sort of solve the other as well. And so there are the problems, and I will come back in a subsequent video to discuss a possible solution.